constantly go in the far door where the sound system is, but I've never seen that door.
How often do you go to the basement?
There's a reason why you haven't seen it.
How often have you been to the basement?
Well, a couple of
Frequently?
times, including the museum
Right,
storage.
right. That's why I went. Lots of stuff in the basement. Years ago.
Well, they have these very strange things. I wonder how many other doors open up. No, those can't. I'm Jordan.
Jim Lee.
Last name? Tobin.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it. You know,
Sad house.
the other day we were wearing name tags at Torah study because Rabbi Mulbaum said you must have been sitting next to people long, but you don't know their names, and it's very true.
Looks like they had a good turnout out here on Saturday service.
I walked today. It was brutally cold.
I wonder
Well, I met a friend at
what happened this
a lot
weekend.
of wind at the social.
Well, it's once a month.
Oh, it's once a month?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just did it last trip, I guess.
Just about
When was
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
in Colorado on Saturday. It was
Oh, jeez.
Hey,
Yeah, it's been real warm out.
and in Palm Springs it was over 100.
Yeah, the Phoenix was over 100, so they started the ball games at night. Daytime. Yeah, it's pretty unusual.
Oh, my daughter-in-law's father, her family, her father, and brother, sister, children were out in Scottsdale.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there when it's 100 degrees. We moved, when David finished Stanford, we moved him in out there.
Was it 2 weeks since the last session?
So I guess that was August. August in Phoenix.
It's rainy season.
No, hot, 110, 120. Yeah, the outdoor pool and the apartment complexes that just basically bathtub.
I remember when I was in the Army, I spent time in San Antonio in the summer. That was brutal.
you are being recorded.
I can remember going out late at night to the still
Yeah. San Antonio. Which is
I can't fall asleep when Rocky's talking.
San Antonio, pretty city. It's beautiful. 100 degrees, that's.
my neighbor.
Hello.
Hello, hi. And we are live being recorded. We are live being recorded.
We're live. So I'm going to mention this again.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
About the 1920. Until 3 weeks.
Jeannie just finished Sorkin.
They did over. I'm reading John Meacham's book, which is a American history document.
5.5 hours. She's Tristan years old. Nancy
Oh,
went to it.
that's right. You went? Oh, she's amazing. There was a big piece on her in the Times the other day. Did you see it? Yeah, we're going Wednesday night. The set? Oh, it is one of the towering men. You know, oh, I'll bet. The Lee bestowed. Evidently, she's singing to a baby. At the, this is really an amazing move, actually. She's not singing to the dead Tristan. She's. I know that.
When does it start Wednesday night?
Well, we're having dinner at 5:15. Starts at 6:30.
That's a 5.5 hour.
It's yeah.
So you don't
Probably
get
out
till
at
12.
Do you think so? They may. They may. That's an interesting point. God. I hope they don't make it shorter, but if you think they use the intermissions, good, good. It's one of the big bonuses, isn't it? Yeah, that's the best. Yeah, you know, Verdi said he doesn't know how anybody wrote Tristan. Verdi said he didn't know how anybody could write Tristan. I mean, it's just. How great, how great. You want to come with us again Wednesday night? We're having dinner at 5:15 in Anatolia. We'll save you a seat. You're not going. Good afternoon, everybody. So nice to see you. Every week the setup is different. The topic is always modern Jewish thinkers, but the setup is different. So theme and variations. Anyway, nice to be together. Today I want to go back to Kaplan. We didn't really touch Kaplan as well as I think we could or should, and do quite a bit on Kaplan. And then to the degree that we have time, we'll move to Israel Salanter and the Musar movement. And the question I've been asking myself about Salanter is, why does he belong in this book? Obviously, Salanter and Musar is very important as an idea and as a movement. Is he a modern Jewish thinker? So I think the answer is yes, but it took me a while to try to get there. So it's a nice challenge, you know, whether or not that he can really fit easily. Welcome to live streamers. Glad to have you. Once again, if you have questions along the way, you can text Jordan Tobin. I'm going to give you his phone number, and you can text him, and then he can pass on the questions to me. Or you can email me. I'm going to give you that address, and I won't be able to respond until later tonight or tomorrow. So Dr. Tobin's phone number is 216-224-8534. 216-224-8534. And my email is rklein, R-K-L-E-I-N, at mishkanor.org. I'm going to spell Mishkan in case there's still somebody left that doesn't know how to spell it. Amazon Man, Amazon Man, I-S is in Sam, H-K-A-N is in name, O-R.org. rklein at mishkanor.org. Glad to have your questions, and we're glad to have you. Okay, so let's go, if you have your books, let's go to page 134. What I'd like to do is just to do some reading here, because some of you don't have books, so we'll have a common amount of material to work on, and let's see what we can make of Mordechai Kaplan. I think it's fair to say that Kaplan is among the most important thinkers of American Judaism. Reconstructionist movement, of the four movements, let's just limit it to the four. Orthodoxy, which is several movements, but let's say modern Orthodoxy, we're dealing with modern Judaism. So that if we're dealing with Orthodoxy, we have to deal with its modern incarnation. That's why I say there are many kinds of Orthodoxy in America, but really they're transplants by and large from the old world. So modern Orthodoxy, conservative Judaism, Reform Judaism, and Reconstructionist Judaism. The first three are all have their origin in Europe. Reconstructionist Judaism is indigenously American. And Mordecai Kaplan is its founding thinker, and quite profound, and I think quite courageous and quite daring. And I think it's fair to say that Kaplan took his ideas to their very end. He had some premises, and he followed them as far as he thought they could be taken. And I think that it's true to say that Reconstructionist impulses have suffused other branches of modern Judaism. And Kaplan, as I pointed out in my note to you last night, who didn't get my email? And you got two. Yeah. You didn't get it either? Okay, I'm sorry about that. I have to do it in chunks. So it took me 4 different emails to get everybody. And I tried to remember where I ended for the first chunk to get the next person as the beginning of the next. And I knew I did some overlapping. Okay. If you didn't get it, could you write down again your name and email address, and I'll be sure to add it to the list. I want to be sure I can get to everybody. So just to finish that thought. So Kaplan, I think it's fair to say, took his thought to its very conclusion, and those who are stimulated or were stimulated by his thinking were often not willing to go as far as he did. So this was a thinker who really worked through the implications of his premises, but not everybody was willing to go as far. Some baseball fans hate the pitch clock. Now we have for this year the ABS, the automated ball and strike. So like Mordecai Kaplan, some people are not willing to go as far as the automated ball and strike. Am I saying something that is you agree with? Okay, so page 134. So I'm about 7 lines down, maybe 5 lines down. Kaplan continued to yearn. You see where I am? A modernized kahila, a community, that would offer a broader basis of communal Jewish life than the synagogue could. That's already very important. For Kaplan, Judaism in its modern expressions cannot be limited to the synagogue. More likely, Kaplan's profound Americanization, so I think that helps to illustrate, or at least to state again what I just said, that it's an American form of Judaism, derives from the education he received at City College of New York, where he graduated in 1900. His studies in sociology and pragmatism, 2 key words. Sociology, of course, is the study of society. And that is Kaplan's starting point, not the premises of theological Judaism, but the social structure of American Judaism today and its needs. And of course, pragmatism is interested in how we enact something. What is its use, as opposed to just its theory? And so these are 2 big impulses in Kaplan's thinking, and again illustrates the Americanism of his thought. His studies in sociology and pragmatism would be a decisive influence on his Jewish thinking. Combined with his excellent Judaic training, obtained first from his father and then from the fledgling Jewish Theological Seminary, Kaplan was one of the few in his generation to be fully grounded in both traditional Judaic learning and cutting-edge American ideas. And what we mean by modern can mean a lot of things. One of the things it means, and I think means to us in our study, is the way in which we are going to try to combine two different sources. American needs, modern needs, let's say, the focus on the individual, the focus on free will, as opposed to having to do what your authorities tell you to do, American modern values and traditional Jewish values. An attempt to bring some synthesis of those two impulses in one form, a balance or another. Or modern orthodoxy is, I might say something like this: mostly Jewish, but some bow to American principles. Reform Judaism may be more this, and so on. So to say that he combines grounded in both traditional Judaic learning and cutting-edge American ideas helps to make him a modern thinker. Skipping down to the second last paragraph. By the 1910s and 20s, in a series of essays, Kaplan emerged as the American Jewish community's most acute critic of American Jewish life. Despite a burgeoning population that would make America home to the world's largest Jewish community, and the incipient signs of an economic advance that would propel Jews from Hester Street tenements to Scarsdale estates, we might call Reconstructionist Judaism the Judaism of second-generation Jews, the children of immigrants who still have ties to the past, but who have already been Americanized and are looking for an American form of a kind of traditional Judaism. Kaplan looked with alarm at the community's religious development. Kaplan considered it obvious that if one-half American Jews didn't bother to belong to or attend synagogues, something was wrong organizationally. This is his sociological perspective. Let's look and see what is happening in the community. And if it looks like we're losing loyalists, this is an emergency. It's not a theological emergency, although he deals with theology along the way, but a crisis of community. Kaplan also thought that the doctrines of all three branches of Judaism, Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, were unresponsive to discoveries in the world of science, philosophy, sociology, and so forth. Modernity with a vengeance. He's really very interested in these impulses. While he didn't coin the well-known phrase and so on, next sentence, Kaplan certainly thought that none of the branches of the American Judaism grasped what being Jewish in America in the 20th century was really about. Being Jewish. Emphasis not on ideas or theology, but what does it mean to be Jewish, and in a way that's going to enhance the flourishing of Judaism. Traditional Judaism begins with revelation. It's Torah that makes Judaism. Kaplan reverses it. What's primary is the Jewish community that will make its own Torah. to serve its needs. Torah Judaism. Which preserves which? Classically, it's Torah that preserves Jewishness, Judaism, the Jewish people. For Kaplan, it's the Jewish people in their capacity to adapt and create new forms of belonging that is going to preserve Torah. But of course, the Torah that it's going to preserve is Torah adapted to the needs of the Jewish community. Torah adapts to the Jewishness, not the other way around. If classically I'm going to want to be a good Jewish person, the question that needs to be answered is, to what degree am I obeying the dictates of Torah? Here, if Torah is going to survive Americanism, it's the Jewish people that are, through its adaptations, going to preserve the essence of Torah while transforming its attributes, its facets. So this is, in a way, Kaplan's revolution in modern Judaism. In a very fine book, at the bottom of the page, on Reconstructionist thinking, Rebecca Alpert and Jacob Staub had contrasted belonging with believing as a crux in Kaplan's ideology. What this means is simply that Jews feel more organically bound. Notice, Jews feel, not Jews ought to feel. If you said ought to feel, that would make Torah primary. What Jews feel now is a piece of sociological data. What this means is simply that Jews feel more organically bound to other Jews than they do to any particular set of beliefs or practices. Our fidelity is to one another and not to Maimonides' 13 principles of the Jewish faith. Recognizing that ethnicity and shared immigrant experiences, notice, experiences, imparted most of the vibrancy to American Jewry, Kaplan urged a frank acceptance of this social viewpoint. In this way, urged Kaplan, we will then realize that our problem is not how to maintain beliefs or uphold laws, but how to enable the Jewish people to function as a highly developed social organism and to fulfill the spiritual powers that are latent in it. Here, Kaplan has a kind of essence-accident distinction. What's fundamental and what's not. What's fundamental is, as he says here, the spiritual powers that are latent in Judaism. This is a constant. Unless we adapt to our environment, what's essential is not going to persist. But if it's going to persist in a new environment, we have to find new understanding of the spiritual powers latent in Judaism. Here's one idea, God. And we'll see that Kaplan radically undermines the traditional views of God. If you read this fairly dense piece from his book, Kaplan has a lot to say about God. God is a constant, both in traditional Judaism, obviously, but also for Kaplan. For Kaplan, God is the power in nature and in us that makes for salvation. The power that is not transcendent, not up there, but in nature and in us. Nature is suffused with dynamism, and so are we. That's what a power is. A power in nature and in us that makes for salvation. Now, Kaplan collapses the double-decker universe. God up here, we're here. The traditional notion of salvation depends upon the double-decker universe. Salvation happens up here, except for a messianic age. That's here, although it requires a Messiah being sent from up there. Yeah. But we have at least three different views of life after death. Resurrection of the body dies, eventually it will go up here. Immortality of the soul, not eventually, but at death. And there's also reincarnation. We go up there, we come down again, we go up there, and so on. So God as the power in nature and in us that makes for salvation. Notice, he's defining God, so God has a place in his system. And God is a power, and there's power in nature and in us. And salvation is a traditional religious term that has to be reconstructed in order to serve our purposes today. In social scientific language, drawn from American philosophers such as Dewey, Peirce, and James, and from secular Jewish thinkers in Eastern Europe, Shimon Dubnov and Achad Ha'am. Achad Ha'am is already one of our heroes. Kaplan emphasized the peoplehood of Jewish existence. Every Jewish institution ought to reflect the fact that Jews saw themselves from an elitist point of view of the rabbis, the Shulchan Aruch, Maimonides. Who cares what the Jews see, how they see themselves? There's a way of being Jewish, and if the people don't get it, they're just not good Jews. Here, the primacy again is shifted downward, down to earth, if I can use that language. Every Jewish institution ought to reflect the fact that the Jews saw themselves as part of a civilization, not just a religion. Synagogues, for instance, ought to be synagogue centers that offered a setting for a variety of social activities. We talked a bit about this a couple of weeks ago. Congregations should be more than places of prayer, and they should be loci of community. The contemporary Chavurot movement owes much to Kaplan. Zacharias Frankel, the grandfather of conservative Judaism in Europe, Frankel broke away from reform, which he thought was too liberal. Had reminded reform leaders in the 1840s that Judaism is the religion of the Jews. In other words, it's not just an abstract set of ethical principles. Kaplan now took this a good step further and declared Judaism is the sum of everything about the Jewish people. We talked about playing Maj on Sunday morning. If this is what the Jewish people are doing, this is not only descriptively a part of Judaism, prescriptively. When the Jews get together, they are enhancing Jewish life. What the Jews are doing is by definition good unless they're robbing banks. In his first book, Judaism as Civilization, Kaplan sums up this approach nicely. Judaism as otherness is thus something far more comprehensive than Jewish religion. It includes the nexus of Now, one of the things Kaplan specializes in is the use of commas. You know, had he been told early in graduate school, you've got a finite number of commas to use, so use them judiciously. No. It includes that nexus of a history, literature, language, social organization, folk sanctions, standards of conduct, social and spiritual ideals, aesthetic values, which in their totality form a civilization. Isn't that great, really? Because I think what he's providing for is a very broad smorgasbord that has the title, "This is Judaism." Come and fill your plate. And each of us is going to fill his or her plate in a different way. But they're all forms of Judaism. If you want an entity to survive in difficult, unprecedented, modern aspects, you better broaden your palate, or else the thing may not survive. That's part of Kaplan's genius, right? A huge tent for Jews. I go to the Jewish Museum in New York. Well, why do I do that? Because I feel a part of the Jewish civilization. This is my art, so to speak. And if I don't come to services or I don't keep kosher, I'm still in the tent. And that's what you want. Kaplan, after the quote, undoubtedly described the nature of Jewish life in America accurately, especially in its second generation of American soil. Notice that Levinson is saying he describes it accurately. There may be different evaluations of this phenomenon. This doesn't mean everybody is going to think this is a good thing or even a form of Judaism, but he certainly has described it. So it might be asked, why did Reconstructionism fail to capture the loyalty of most American Jews in Kaplan's lifetime? And Levinson offers two ideas. The first one I'll just summarize. Because Kaplan resisted creating a movement. Had he created a movement with its superstructure, right, a building, a periodical, activities, and so on, it might have had the functional aspects that draw people to it. Kaplan didn't want to form yet another denomination. He thought that Reconstructionist Judaism could really be a part of all movements. And I don't know if the Orthodox have embraced much of it, but certainly most of the other branches of Judaism have. So this lack of a physical and institutional center may be one reason why it didn't flourish. Let's go to the last couple of lines. Here's reason two, which I think is interesting. In a probing essay, sociologist Charles Liebman pointed to another reason for the limits of Reconstructionism's success. It was exactly Kaplan's frank and honest approach in focusing. This is the point that I was making earlier, that he's going to take his premises very far, and that lots of people instinctively, emotionally, may not be able to follow him, even though they get the intellectual power. Let's go back. Liebman pointed to another reason for the limits on Reconstruction's success. It was exactly Kaplan's frank and honest approach in focusing on the ethnic folk religion of American Jews that was unappealing. Liebman writes, most American Jews are not quite willing to admit to this virtue publicly. You remember that very famous book by Will Herberg, Protestant, Catholic, and Jew, 2 or 3 generations ago. Think of the title, written in the 50s or the early 60s. Jews are now part of the religions of America. It's not Protestant and Catholic, subtitle, and the Jews too. Protestant, Catholic, and Jew. We have made it. We are now part of the normal culture of religion in America. So, this is quoting Liebman. Most American Jews are not quite willing to admit to this virtue publicly. The entire basis of Jewish accommodation to America the legitimacy of Jewish separateness. We get to be Jews in America. Has been that Judaism is a religion. Protestant and Catholic, religions, and Judaism, something else. No. Protestant, Catholic, and Jew. Who denies that Protestantism is a religion? Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, Irish Catholicism, these are also cultures. Protestantism is really a religion. Judaism is a variety of things. But for Kaplan, religion is just one part of it. This threatens the equality of Protestant, Catholic, and Jew. But notice that this quote is so interesting. Most American Jews are not quite willing to admit to this virtue publicly, right? So that whatever we think, we want to belong to America and be seen as fully belonging. The entire basis of Jewish accommodation to America, the legitimacy of Jewish separateness, has been that Judaism is a religion, like Catholicism and Protestantism, and that Jews are not merely an ethnic group like the Irish or the Italians. Okay? So Liebman sees a little bit of, and I think Levinson uses this word somewhere, a bit of hypocrisy here. So many of us are not religious Jews. We're cultural Jews, social Jews. But it's hard in America to acknowledge that Judaism is not fundamentally one of the religions of America. And even though we feel something different, we don't want to say it publicly, at least in the 50s and the 60s. Okay. To put it another way, Jews recognize that the depth of their infra-group loyalty could only be justified, even if inaccurately, in more traditional religious terms than Kaplan was wont to employ. I think that's lovely. Let's go down a couple of paragraphs. I'm going to read a little bit more, and then we'll talk a little bit. Maybe you have some questions or comments. Despite the influence of the atheist Chad Ha'am, and despite his own lifelong support of Zionism, at that time an essentially secular enterprise, Kaplan asserted that Judaism is a religious civilization. So that's a new feature here, that the fundamental adjective is religion, even though we're a lot of other things. The power in nature and in us that makes for salvation. And if you redefine salvation, as I think Kaplan is wanting to do, as self-fulfillment, realizing our potential. For Kaplan, this is a religious idea. That's what religion is attempting to do, to enable the individual and the community to flourish given all the raw materials at our disposal. Religion can't make us fly, but it can give us well-being. It can give us trust. It can give us a sense of loyalty. And so Kaplan wants to hold on to those features, making the fundamental attribute of our civilization religion. And in this way, I think very cleverly, I don't mean that as a criticism, tries to hold on to the fundamental quality of religion to traditional Judaism, which can be imported, although transformed in our day. If he were to define us as a chess-playing civilization, wouldn't capture the power, the depth, the durability of our civilization. I mean, I think it can be fairly, if not controversially said, that the fundamental institution of Jewish life is the synagogue. For all the power of the Jewish community center and family service and federation and homes for the aged, you may think this is unfair, but I'll say it anyway. These are all horizontally oriented institutions trying to make life better. The synagogue is always looking up to something transcendental, something permanent, something powerful, something that's beyond, if not spatially, what we do every day on earth. And that makes if you agree with it, and maybe you don't, that the fundamental institution of Jewish life in terms of its survival is the synagogue, and the synagogue is fundamentally religious, then to call Judaism a religious civilization picks up on that idea. What Kaplan meant by this is that every civilization has its own particular tendencies. See, notice that he's a pluralist in terms of entities, civilizations, its own genius. This is an American idea, isn't it? Pluralism. Let all boats rise. We have a boat. We want to rise, but there are other boats who want to rise too, each with its own genius. In the case of Jewish civilization, that genius was religion. For the Greeks, let's say art. For the Romans, law. For the Irish, literature. Thus, any authentic Jewish civilization ought to be expressed largely, though not exclusively, in religious terms. Notice that Kaplan has slipped in something here that is surprising. An essentialist view of Judaism. We're a bunch of stuff, all the commas, but our genius is religion. And one might not expect that from his this worldly, sociological, pragmatic tendencies. So I think Kaplan would say, if he were here, he would say, come on now. Of course, religion has an impulse, a drive, an aspiration that chess doesn't have. And we've always driven for something higher, something more, something permanent. So I think he would argue that it's okay that I've done this, but please don't call it an essentialism. I'm not an essentialist. Since religion is also a universal human need, nothing could be more natural than for a Jew to celebrate his or her blessings, mourn her his sorrows, mark her his life cycle events in the midst of the community of Israel through the sacred symbols of traditional Judaism. In a large sense, the practice of any civilization is its own justification. There's no extrinsic criterion which some ways of life may meet and some ways of life might not. And therefore we can judge on the basis of some external standard. What does God want? And if we had a view of that, we then could say, oh, yeah, well, this is a good person. This is not such a good person. What he's saying is that, let me put it this way. What's the fundamental truth of baseball? There is nothing outside of baseball. Baseball it's got its own rule book. It's got its own view of what moves are legitimate and what moves are not, how each player performs, what the goal is, when might the goal be reached, its own rules, its own structure. In what sense is this a good game? Because there's a standard out there of a good game, and baseball meets those criteria. No. Baseball, if it's played well, is its own standard. So, what is the best of all sports? See? Arthur Lavin. Writing a note home. That's a nonsense question, isn't it? Football is football, hockey is hockey. We know that's not true. But I think that's what he's saying, that look, I mean, the word game, I don't know if I've used the word game here before, maybe I have, can have two connotations. It can be a sort of trivia, he's just playing games. But it also can have a very serious set of connotations as the way in which any activity is deployed, right? Friday night at 6 o'clock, we play the game of Kabbalat Shabbat. It has a prayer book. It has an order of prayers. If I read the Aleinu before the Shema, you might say, you're not playing the game right. Not in a trivial sense. A game is a series of moves which are sanctioned by the rule book of the game, ways to play it, goals, how to get it right, how to get it wrong. It's all inherent in the game itself. So why Judaism? Why Judaism is Judaism exists. Protestantism exists. And if it plays its game well, then that's its own justification. No transcendent justification. Mark?
Would it be true that, so baseball is a good game because 150 years later, even with rule changes, right, we're still playing. The people have still deemed it worthwhile to engage in it, even though they've also then said, oh, we want to tweak it here, we want to tweak it there, we want to tweak it there. And isn't, so taking it to the next extreme here, it's the same concept, right? Judaism is available, it continues to be participatory, right? So we obviously continue to do it, therefore it is still good, although in capitalist world and in our world, we kind of change the rules as we go a little bit, but those rules have to be agreed, acknowledged, absorbed, accepted by those who continue to play in order for it, right? So it's sort of this evolutionary aspect, but it's good only in the sense that we continue to execute against.
Yeah.
Yes. Is that fair?
Oh, I think it's a wonderful analogy. I think the analogy works all the way down. Before the pitch clock, 4 or 5 years ago, games were lasting 3 hours and 20 minutes, 3.5 hours. People turned it off. Kids weren't watching, mostly night games. The game of baseball was not working. It needed to be reconstructed. In order to, no, I think what you're doing here, Mark, is you're showing that this whole concept of playing the game with no external, that's the point, no external justification. They didn't bring in the pitch clock because out there is some rule. It's that the game itself wasn't working. The game of Judaism, I hope you get the connotation of game that I'm using here. The game of Judaism was not working for Americanizing Jews who went to the university and studied theology. They studied the existentialists and the They studied Nietzsche and Feuerbach and Freud, all of whom had very dramatic critiques of religion. They learned that. And, well, is religion going to die? It's got important things to do. You need to reconstruct it so that the game, which is worth playing, can still be played. I think that is great. Yeah.
I might make a different kind of point. I think of baseball when there might be a dispute. You don't care for the call by the umpire or whatever. Yet you come back and play the next inning. You play the next day. You play the next season. So the question is, in our discussion, when there's a dispute in Judaism, in the practice, are you going to come back and play the next day?
Yeah. So you have focused on one game, one team. Let's take the issue of free agency, where the Dodgers just have a payroll of $400 million, and the Miami Marlins $73 million. So one could call that a kind of a dispute here. That's not resolved by this game or this team. There's something broader here that renders a judgment. You think that deals with your question? They come back and play the game, but the particular game is beginning to look very problematic.
Yes, that's a concern. I was focusing on the game of Judaism.
Okay.
And suggesting that, again, the old joke, you sit down with two Jews, you have 3 disputes. Yet they're willing to come back tomorrow and do it all over again.
Or not.
Or not, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Then they're no longer playing the game.
Well, how many ways are there to play the game? I think Kaplan would say there are many ways of playing the game. You don't like what's happened at the Kabbalat Shabbat service, I'm not coming back anymore. I'm not going to play at the Mishkan Or's game.
Exactly.
But I may go over to Temple Emmanuel, or I may drop out entirely and play a different kind of game. Or I might come for Maj and a lecture and so on. Still be a part, but not integral to it. So there are many ways to play the game if you don't like some of it. I think what you're pointing out, though, is there are those who are not going to want to play the game at all anymore.
And they take the football and go home.
But they football and go home. Right. And those are the people, and I mean this only descriptively, who, I'm going to say it theoretically, it's maybe too highfalutin for the point. They don't want to play the dual game of Judaism in the modern world. Somehow one of those poles has taken charge. They don't like what's going on in the Jewish part of the modern world, so they acculturate and assimilate. And they've stopped playing the game. And there is that.
Oh, yes.
There is that. And that's one of the reasons for religious reform, to try to hold on to those who are moving out. Steve?
If we can escape baseball for a moment.
Who wants to?
Kaplan seems to be arguing that Judaism as a civilization is so much more than a religion.
Yeah.
But at its core, it is a religion.
Yes.
But it just seems that even taking that piece, Judaism is not a religion in the same sense that Christianity is religion, in the sense that we largely don't have dogma or creed. We're very much focused on peoplehood and history, and Christianity, followers of Christ. We are not a follower of a particular individual, whether they be divine or otherwise. So there's still sort of a disconnect there. Does he, even if you accept sort of religion, Judaism, you don't have a Christian civilization in the same sense of a Jewish civilization. He says it's a religious civilization, but there's no real analogy. It stands on its own.
Judaism.
Judaism as a civilization, there is no analogous other religion as civilization in the same sense that Judaism as a civilization, because Judaism as religion is not a religion in the same sense that Christianity is a religion, or that practically any other religion which has a creed and dogma and so on.
So, I don't know whether you know that this past Saturday was Bach's 341st birthday. Anybody know this? And at the Church of the Covenant down on Euclid Avenue, yesterday they had a Bach marathon. 4 hours of Bach's music in this glorious church. Civilization, music, religious art. You know, so I don't know if I should go here. I'm going to anyway. So there are two contemporary forms of physics in the 17th century. There's Newtonian physics and Cartesian Descartes physics. Newtonian physics, essentially, his view of the universe is it's empty with a few things in it, planets and stars. Cartesian physics is on the model of a vortex, which is full of turbulence. And Voltaire once said, when I go to England, Protestant England, the universe is empty. When I go to Catholic Spain, the universe is full. And Catholicism, I think, is a religion with lots of culture. I think Protestantism probably doesn't. I mean, but when I was down there yesterday and I looked at their bulletin, they've got all kinds of activities going on there. Trips for kids and art things and so on. Very, very analogous. So that's the first thing. I mean, I think that some religions don't also have the full civilizational aspect that Judaism, and I think Catholicism do have. Islam as well. I mean, Muslim philosophy and iconography and their mosques and so on. In terms of Christ, it's true we don't have a Christ figure, but we do have structurally the same thing. It's not that God gave his only begotten Son to us that we may have eternal life. But we have, God gave the Torah to Moses, and all Jews have a place in the world to come. I mean, the structure is very vertical as well as horizontal, historical. Would you go for that?
No. I think you're pushing the...
Do you? Okay. Yeah. Do you guys think I'm pushing it too? Next week, those of us who agree with me will meet here. Yeah. I wouldn't want to say that all religions are the same. That would be foolish. I think Buddhism doesn't really have a transcendent element, does it? It's the Buddha tells us how to live a life. I may be wrong. I don't know much about Buddhism. Okay. So the point you're making is that while Kaplan thinks that, just to use the game idea, we're playing a version of the game that other religions are playing, and your point is not exactly. Different games.
Very much so.
Okay. It's something to think about. I think Kaplan is trying to find a place for Judaism in pluralistic religious America.
And I think that he's just sort of taken it one level down, because the folks who don't want to admit publicly is taking that sort of simplistic view that Judaism is just like Protestantism and just like Catholicism, and he's saying, well, it's a civilization, it has all of these other aspects to it, but it also has this sort of central idea of a religion, but again, that's just sort of that's enlarging it, but we still have the same problem. The problem being that Judaism isn't a religion like all the other religions. And so my main point is, is there another civilization that we can, in some way, without pushing it too hard, say that it's sort of a parallel to similar kind of thing. And I don't know enough about Kaplan, but to me, it feels like it stands alone, that there really isn't anything that's quite like this Jewish civilization that he's describing.
And I'm not sure that Kaplan places a high premium on that. I think he wants to play the game of Judaism and feels like Mark's analogy with a rule book, that we're going to have to change some moves, but we're still playing the same game.
But if there was another civilization that was in some ways parallel, then we could compare and contrast. We could say, what's good, what's bad, what do they do better than we, and we do better than them, and that sort of thing.
Right. Now, that would be interesting to do. And you'd have to, in a certain way, find a sociological situation similar to the America in which he was writing, where assimilation, where losing people, we go to the university, all those cultural forces that are putting pressure on Jewish survival. Yes?
So I'm thinking that like Jewish leaders have been struggling for centuries as to whether we're a people, a nation of people, whether we're just a religion. And I'm wondering, do you think that in the 1940s and 50s, after World War II and after the Holocaust, and after we saw what the extremes of racial anti-Semitism led to, that there was a proclivity then, or preference to say, okay, we're just a religion, and we're not a people, not a race. So is that part of the thinking of Kaplan, to move away from racial anti-Semitism?
So you're saying that the racial anti-Semitism of the 30s and 40s pushed Judaism not to say we're a corporate entity. Yeah.
To say we're just a religion. And that racial anti-Semitism, as you've shown us, I mean, it started in the 1880s.
Yeah.
It's not just, a recent thing.
No, that's true. Although the reformers, I think, in early Reform Judaism, there were not just non-Zionists, there were anti-Zionists, which, and I think that the ideology was that we're really not a nation. We may be a congregation of individuals. So I think that notion...
Our nation is Germany, our nation is France.
Right, exactly. So I think that idea of resisting a corporate, to use that word, definition, may have been enhanced or amplified by the Holocaust, but I think it already existed in forms of Enlightenment and onward Judaism. Because the individual, we'll see this in Salanter as well, who really focuses on the individual and the needs of individuals. Clark?
So, if I understand, Kaplan wants to successfully transplant Judaism into a new American soil and make sure that it thrives. But my question really is, and because he's a genius, I see, between his incorporation of the sociological approach and the pragmatism, but what does he truly believe himself? In other words, I can see him as this great puppeteer making it happen on stage. But has he given up, that external validation that he says the American Jews may have given up post-Holocaust? Has he given up revelation? Has he given up what the animating spiritual force is behind Judaism? Has he bought into his play, or is he just a playwright?
In other words, does he live the Reconstructionist life? He did. His daughter was the first bat mitzvah in America. So in that sense, he was playing he was reconstructing. He also was raised as a traditional Jew. I don't know whether I can get away with just being descriptive here or not. Descriptively, it's very hard to give up that upon which you were raised. You know, it's in your blood. It's part of your emotional life. To that, I don't know the answer to your question, but to that degree, I think we could say he did continue a traditional life because as an individual, it was hard for him to give it up. He was a very severe guy. So it's very possible that he did give it all up. And he played the game of Reconstruction. I don't know. It's an interesting question. Could we forgive him for having this really rich theory, an accommodation to American Judaism that still wants to thrive, and still himself play the old game? Would we call him a hypocrite? I don't think so.
I'm always concerned, are we throwing out the baby with the bathwater?
No.
And how far do we go? And that balance is an exquisite balance. And
Don't you think Reconstructionism has entered, suffused our lives? I mean, when the temple at University Circle was built in 1923, Abba Hillel Silver came in 1917, and there were already blueprints for the new building, which he tore up because the blueprint contained a swimming pool. So, Judaism as a civilization. You bring them, as a community center. So, I think, I don't know if I agree with you, the throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I mean,
I'm not saying he did. I'm just saying
does this do it?
you got to be careful.
You always have to be careful. It's true. Gosh. I have another baseball analogy. I'll suppress
One
it.
thing he threw out was Judaism is the chosen people.
No question. And he makes this point explicitly. Everything about Judaism can be redefined, reconstruction, except chosenness. There's no way of altering that and still making it palatable. So that you have to throw out. And that was pretty courageous of him, because it was an anomaly in his system. And he was honest enough to say, I'm not going to try, touch your left ear. There's an easier way. He wasn't going to do that to preserve chosen. Arthur?
So the baby in bathwater reminds me of a great essay by, I think it was Amos Oz, and he remembers when he was a kid in Israel, walking by street in Jerusalem, down in the basement window where Orthodox Jews studying text, and he looked down there and he thought, well, another 50, 100 years, this will wash away. Mm-hmm. This is anachronistic. This isn't today's Judaism. Mm-hmm. And then he developed in the essay the thought that the kids in the yeshiva were looking up at him and thinking, he's the ephemera. That over time, he's cut himself off, the baby in the bathwater, and there'll be no memory of people like Amos Oz or what they did. And so the question is, Mordecai Kaplan seemed to think it wasn't ephemeral to talk about the cultural aspects of Judaism. It was core. And it would help us endure. Yeah. The question is, 50 years later, where are we at? Because I don't know what it's like in the 50s, but it seems like for most of my life, about half of Jews in America, by one survey and another, unaffiliated. Doesn't seem to shift a whole lot over time. And different groups surge in popularity. Right now it seems like the Orthodox ways of attacking people. And I know talking to people over time, people are not particularly affiliated or knowledgeable or drawn to the Orthodox centers now because they feel like there's a deeper spirituality there. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting to me is that's very Kaplan-esque too. Because it's not as though they see God or they feel like they have to obey the mitzvot. They feel a deeper spirituality. It's a very subjective, it's not obligation. Again, they're drawn by what feels good to them. And so I'm wondering if Kaplan was would he say, oh, thank God, literally, thank God I did this, because half of American Jews are affiliated, it would have been a much lower number without what I
yeah,
did?
yeah.
Or would he say, I think I missed the mark, because people are really turning to a more traditional way to find maybe where the baby is in the bathwater?
Yeah, there's a lovely comment, I can't remember who made it, that he who marries the spirit of the day will soon end up a widower. Because the spirit of the times changes, and you don't know if you're doing something that's going to have permanence. You remember the Liebman quote here several minutes ago. The entire basis of Jewish combination marriage, the legitimacy of Jewish separateness, has been that Judaism is a religion. Like Catholicism and Protestantism, the Jews are not merely any ethnic group like the Irish or the Italians. Liebman was making the point that the people feel, for whatever Kaplan says about civilization, that fundamentally it's a religion. And maybe they would go further and say it's only the religion that will survive all the changes in culture down through the years. And this return to orthodoxy may signal not necessarily a truth, but again, sociologically. I mean, you drive up Green Road, one new building, gorgeous new building after another. And any time of day, you see people on the sidewalk all in the same garb. I sometimes I'll be driving home at 10 o'clock at night, and the lights are on in that big building. Something is going on there. So, I mean, in a certain way, Kaplan, I think it's a brilliant construction, but it may be very ephemeral. Wendy, do you have a comment?
Well, I was just wondering what Kaplan would, if he was putting community before Torah,
Yes.
would he have considered it to be authentic Jewishness, authentic Jewish connection? Or if somebody just didn't enjoy or relate to worship services, but came to classes or chose to play Maj at Temple instead of playing Maj somewhere else, or, just had other kinds of connections, chose to be connected to Jewish institutions in other ways. Would he have considered that to be authentically Jewish if because he was saying that it's all about community. What if somebody feels very much connected to the community, but not to the religious part?
I think he would say yes, because by coming, let's just take the Maj Sunday morning, the tables, there must be 16, 18, 20 people playing. There's a lot of energy happening there. They seem to be having a great time together. They're making friendships. They're making connections. See you next week. It's not inevitable that they will come to do some other things, but the temple, if we did a heat analysis on what activities and places grabbed people in their lives, each of us would have a different set of heats. This becomes a heat source for people, and therefore the community is strengthened.
It reminds me of years ago when I was a counselor at Jewish Family Service, and people would come for their counseling to Jewish Family Service because it was Jewish.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were not out, they may not have been affiliated with the synagogue or anything else, but it meant something to them.
Yeah.
To get their counseling in a Jewish mental health, setting. So I don't know, I think people sort of have different ways of connecting, and they might feel that civilizational pull that Kaplan identified, but not necessarily the religious aspect.
Well, I think Kaplan would say not necessarily. He would say necessarily not. It doesn't have to be the religious. Now, the Liebman quote suggests that really, I mean, and Kaplan in a way says it too, that religion is the key adjective. And so the striving seems to Kaplan to be, let me, this is from a book by Rifat Sansino and Danny Syme, Finding God, 10 Jewish Responses. And here's, Kaplan's naturalistic God concept is based on the proposition that the world can be explained in terms of scientifically verifiable ideas. People in the past, Kaplan tells us, related to God as if God were a source of magical powers that responded to human wishes. Most believers considered God a supernatural being who operated in the world, unbound by the limitations of natural law. Unfortunately, adds Kaplan, some people still think this way. Unfortunately. All human beings, wrote Kaplan, have physical and as well as spiritual needs. Man, once his physiological needs are satisfied, begins to experience the need to overcome such traits as self-indulgence, arrogance, envy, exploitation, and hatred, or to bring under control the aggressive forces of his nature. Namely, we all want to engage in self-improvement. Yet if it's true, in brief, Kaplan defined his concept of God in a variety of ways in various places. For example, God is the sum of everything in the world that renders life significant and worthwhile or holy. I'm reading these as to test whether or not we think that his reconstructed idea still counts as religion. The totality of those forces, everything in the world, our capacities, nature's capacities to support human striving, the totality of these forces and the totality of those forces in life that render human life worthwhile. See, he's bringing in some loaded language, worthwhile. The power that impels human beings to become fully human, the drive to be the best version of ourselves, the sum of the animating, organizing forces and relationships that are forever making a cosmos out of chaos, order. God is the power in nature, and this is his famous definition. God is the power in nature and in us that makes for salvation. Not a power out there, but a power inherent. You know, I often say at a Shiva, right before we light the candle, that whatever you believe about God, we all agree that we have things in our lives that we ourselves didn't make for ourselves. Ears that hear, eyes that see, hands that reach out, minds that think. These are gifts, even if there's not a giver, so that the universe is enchanted. And these gifts are capacities that, if we use them well, enhances life for ourselves and our community. Isn't this an idea of redemption in a certain way? To take a world filled with potential and to bring that potential to realization.
You have a gift without a giver.
Well, look, I mean, it's phenomenological in the sense that isn't the capacity to think what we're doing right now. What's happening here? I am forming vibrations in my larynx. I'm sending them out to you. I think that behind those vibrations are ideas. What do you receive? Vibrations. And you convert them into ideas. Now, that is a phenomenal fact. The magic of conversation, which requires potential, which by definition is there all along, and the actualization of potential, which is what we do with what we have as gifts.
It sounds reductionist to me. Think of consciousness. You know, and how is consciousness created? Does it emerge from complexity, or is it a gift with a giver?
Well, I'm making a claim here that we can look at something as a blessing without a blesser. I think that's what
Why can't we make the argument that while we may not know who the giver is, we may not be able to actualize the giver, see the giver, touch the giver, why can we not sort of look at the way in which the power that animates the world, organized the world, led to evolution, led to those vibrations, led to the eardrum being able to receive those vibrations? Why do we not just simply make the argument that that is God's power, right? God is maybe not the power, maybe God could come down into the world and touch Clark, but doesn't have to. Maybe that's not the point any longer. Maybe the point is God created the organizing force by which all of these things, the gift is many times removed already from the giver, but has evolved to the point that it is. So, I mean, I'm not sure I follow, Clark. I mean,
I'm not sure you're, look,
Clark, there is a giver. We just aren't right, it's not right in front of us.
see, I think that Kaplan, I don't believe, is arguing philosophically. He's not trying to make an airtight philosophical, logical case. He's trying to save Judaism. And he's trying to ask himself, what is it that a particular generation needs in order to plausibly to themselves, we who have interacted with all kinds of people with all kinds of beliefs, not in a ghetto where everybody's ideas and values are reinforced every single day by everybody else. The power of our beliefs is tested every day by sets of beliefs of other people. He's just trying to say, how is it that we can remake a religion like Judaism that is going to hold the Jewish people together?
Yeah, but I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
I mean, you started the day by talking about the struggle that Kaplan had
Yes.
with Judaism accepting science and
Yeah.
having to reformulate the way in which we see the world, because certain things that we thought were true just aren't true.
Yeah, yeah,
Other things are true. So
right.
how then does Judaism adapt to, that's got to go away. That's no longer true. This is not a true statement anymore. And so that's the whole notion here, is that it's not just trying to save Judaism. It's a notion that there are inaccuracies. There are things that don't hold with truths as we now know them.
True, but if those truths
There's still something worth saving, right? So if you truly believe that all of that was no longer true,
yes,
and oh, by the way, it makes everything else about Judaism irrelevant, he wouldn't have tried to save Judaism. There's still some relevancy.
oh, absolutely.
Right? And that is that God animated the world in some fashion, and that we still seek completeness, or some version of whatever that means, that will lead to salvation, whatever that is, right? And so I would argue that he's not just trying to save Judaism. Well, he is, but only at that central core.
What do you mean central core?
God is, God acts, God acted. There is some form of wholeness or completion or return that we call salvation. And other than that, maybe nothing else, right? And that's why it then becomes the smorgasbord, right? And we keep trying to say religion is defined by coming to services, and I get back to Wendy's point. So what if it's really just about creating an environment? I'll go to Martin Buber, right? What if religion is nothing more than trying to create an environment in which everyone can have more I-thou moments than they ever had before? Maybe Maj is one of those moments, right? Maybe Maj is an opportunity to sit across the table from somebody and not use them, right? Maybe it leads to that better knowing of that person. I don't know, right? But I think I've struggled because we keep falling down on the definition of religion, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I think,
Religion mean you have to believe in God.
Well, that's a different, I don't know. That one is
Right.
a struggle for me, right? I think the answer a lot of I hear is no. That is a struggle for me, personally. If there's no God, is it a religion?
but don't you think Kaplan is right in the sense that, I mean, his fundamental criterion or need is to sustain the community. And if this reconstruction of theory has brought new vitality to community, then whether or not it's true, whether or not it's changed out of existence. I mean, you look at the Friday night bulletin here, you look at the newsletter, how many of the activities are services per se, so that we bring hundreds and hundreds of people into the building every month, which must suggest something about the truth of Kaplan's reconstruction.
I agree, it's effective,
Okay.
which is excellent.
Yes.
And that's good. The question is, why does he care that it's effective at all? Why create a sense of community? Because he's still God-centered, though, right? I mean, he's still, at the end of the day, he believes community is critical, but he has not given up on the idea that God is.
Yes, but not God as an entity, not God as sitting up there
I
and,
agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah, he's certainly saying.
But he's thinking of God not as an entity, but as a process. And process, if it has a goal, and we have some sense about not only the goal, but how to get there, then the idea of salvation, of some X moment that is a goal of human striving, is reenacted without this magical God who sits up there and enters the world and listens to prayer. You know, the Talmud itself says that a person who gets up from his prayer a better person, his prayer has been answered. That's very Kaplan-esque, because if we're on a path toward, but I think Kaplan would want to say, any element here that is going to put off university-educated, pluralistic-minded individuals is going to be weakening the Jewish future. Let's find a way that doesn't do that. And I think his guess is that God is not necessary except as a process. Nature is always what it is, but human beings can strive to be more than we were yesterday. And that's part of religion's goals. Yes?
Since my family has multiple faith traditions, I'll leave the metaphysics to other people at the table. I just want to tell people that on Wednesday at 6 p.m., tomorrow on Tuesday at 6 p.m., there is a Zoom talk about Mordecai Kaplan, because there is a new biography that was written about him. And if you go to My Jewish Learning, I don't know if it's .com or .org, at the very top, it says, get to know Mordecai Kaplan. It's kind of hard to find on their website. You'd think since it's tomorrow's Zoom, it would be the most prominent thing on their website.
It's a Zoom. It's Zoom.
It's a webinar. I mean,
It's a webinar.
Right, it's not going to.
Who's the author of the book? Do you know?
I didn't write it down.
Great.
But it's sponsored by the New York Jewish Learning Society, but I believe the website is myjewishlearning.org or .com. Starts at 6 tomorrow. My understanding is it's someone interviewing the author and that it's in the form of a webinar. It's not going to be like 50 people on the screen. It's going to be broadcast to a larger group.
Nice. Am I right, or?
Whether this biographer will resolve the question of whether he's a hypocrite, whether it will resolve the question of his theology. The mere fact that he addressed theology, most of the people we've been listening to have studied, have only indirectly talked about theology. He actually talked about it, but that's not the reason I raised my hand. I raised my hand to make the announcement for those who are interested in Mordecai Kaplan and learning more.
And isn't it?
It is .com.
Jenna Josely wrote the book. She's a
Oh,
cultural historian.
okay, very good. And the fact that new biographies are being written means for somebody, I don't want to overstate it, this is still a vibrant, but there are two ways of looking at Kaplan or the Reconstructionist impulse. His own reconstruction and the very impulse of Reconstruction itself in a dynamic society where things are changing all the time, you have to reckon with change and not necessarily accede to it, but take it seriously. So that Reconstruction, I'm about to say something too excessive here, but I'll say it anyway. Reconstruction would seem to be on our agenda from now on. We just not constantly need to be thinking about what changes, what's permanent, and what needs to be changed. And in that sense, Kaplan did face the problem and tried to come up with something, however flawed it might be. Mark?
One last point, though. I mean, I think you also need to be sensitive, or I should say, I need to be sensitive to the idea that at some point, the change creates something new that's no longer what it used to be. So if we use the baseball analogy, if we come to baseball tomorrow and we say, you know what, it's now going to be 14 people, and we're going to be 5 outs, and we're going to use different balls, and it's no longer it may be a great game, right? But it's not baseball. So, I mean, there is something here that says there's some central core that he's trying to preserve, right? Even though the smorgasbord can get bigger and this and that, there is something that is immutable in his mind. Right?
Yeah.
Because he still calls it Jewish, right? He still calls it Judaism. Why is he not?
Although he might be wrong.
He might, maybe he is.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I guess that's one.
But he still has the God idea, which we talked about.
Right, and so I guess that's my question, is that there's some core animus, right, animating feature to Mordecai Kaplan, that he's trying to save something. And the question is, what is he? I mean, I guess that's.
Well, all those commas that I mocked earlier, I mean, those are all aspects of Judaism as it's lived. There's the liturgy, there's the literature, there's the music. I think he's trying to.
All different ways to approach something. Right?
Yes.
And the question is, approach what?
But I think that Jordan 2 weeks ago put his finger on one of the possible problems here. This is not just the Jewish Community Center, a bunch of activities, what I call kind of the horizontal impulses. There's also the vertical. A synagogue is distinguished by trying for the transcendent, the universal, the deathless. Has Kaplan sustained it? I think his notion of the power and nature in us that makes for salvation is an attempt. Maybe it's a pale attempt, maybe it fails, but I think that's his attempt to maintain the vertical, the transcendent, without the players in the transcendent, right? Torah was not given in heaven. Torah just happens to be the basic book of the Jewish people. I mean, we learned this at the university. There's J, E, P, and D. It's written by many people over many years. There are contradictions. It has all the attributes of a literature that was put together over a long period of time. I think Kaplan would say, but it's our literature. These are our stories, our heroes and heroines. And when we study Torah, we're playing that game, so to speak. Is it enough? That's a very good question.
You might say it's our Jewish genius, our Jewish consciousness that created these stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. But like Homer and Hesiod, we continue to read them because they tell us the truth about things. A truth. Yeah. So should we go on to Salanter now? Okay, so turning to okay.
Maybe next time.
Steve to the rescue again. Hey, by the way, this has been a really animated discussion. Kaplan is very challenging, whatever the ultimate value of what he's bringing. I find him very, very
We
challenging.
continue, Roger, that somebody's on second base.
Yeah, that's right. Starting next week, we start the session with somebody on second base.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, right, 2 weeks. Right. Used to be that a foul ball in the 1800s, if you had a foul ball and it was caught in foul territory on a bounce, it was an out. You caught on a bounce. It was an out on a bounce. So baseball has been from the very beginning. Of course. Can they or can't they? They can. I guess you're right about that. Yeah. That's a dead ball. Yeah. You know, in 1880, 2 perfect games were pitched within 5 days. But that was a time when 9 balls made a walk. So nobody was walking. I mean, you kept the runners off base. And the ball was dead.
Sorry, my memory doesn't go back that far.
What's that, Lou?
My memory doesn't go back that far.
Mine does. I think so. I think so. I mean, especially the so-called, the people who go to the university and get into the professions and can't accept this.
You trip on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I think the genius of Kaplan is to agree with all of his ideas. You can pick and choose. Right, in some ways,
Yes, he gives a long introduction and then says, now I'll shut up.
him trying to reconcile science and sort of a rationalist approach to things. But
Yes. It's quite remarkable. I thought there was something in the Talmud thought about that, but I may be mistaken. I'm Howard Katz. Good
One of
evening.
the geniuses of Judaism is
I took the Old Testament and New Testament in college, and I'm pretty certain that the Jews are supposed to get food. Yes.
and if you look sort of
The
evolution,
author this week, the Jewish
one of the
South,
geniuses of Judaism is not
they also did
both sides. So the thing is that
I realized my camp when I was worried about the future of Jewish
have been
people.
anticipated.
Yes, but I would be worried that we're not giving out the food.
They didn't come to us today. So the multiplicity of different streams of Judaism
I think the argument
is actually
I'm semi-retired.
it's the ephemeral, right?
So I'm like part-time in Cleveland State. We may have not. We may have not.
Sure.
Yeah, and I moved away from Cleveland. Yeah. And are you retired? Yeah. So, I taught at Case, but I also taught at Cleveland State, worked in local government, moved to North Carolina, family brought me back. I taught first-year students, very first-year courses in land use, zoning, and constitutional law, which I now refuse to get near. I can't cope with anything about constitutional law. If I were teaching it, I would have to think about it. Good to see you again. Yes, I think we may actually have met at something here. Maybe when Rabbi Klein was doing his conference. Or that's possible. So that's what's
They feel that connection.
I went to Shaker's.
Oh, well, yeah, they used to have rumbles between Sager. We have
Yes, science is trying to explain
now, when we lived here before, we lived in the last time we lived.
part of the universe.
What's that? No. I took a job in North Carolina with the idea that we eventually retired.
You can't prove how far.
My older brother
And then he might be built a silver.
got very ill. He had no
And it's a
plugged back into Rabbi Klein's classes and to other things in Cleveland that we had left behind.
Darwin's revolution is going to take 5 years to really see through.
So I somehow think, well, this
we might still
A few years ago, there was celebrating the invention of kosher bacon. Think about it.
I emailed you a link to the pamphlet.
Oh, I did as well. Which I did sign up for, and I forgot about it. I have to give you two headlines. Just very quickly.
you know where
There's a lot more. So I met with a lot on Friday.
money, make it straight over.
And I think one, she wants to do a silver scholarship. It's just different approaches. She wasn't so surprised. And she told me about all the hurdles that we had crossed to get cases and well, usual hurdles of university doing anything. So, I talked to Steve Hoffman, who said he would already. And Mandel's very funded case, so. Leverage. But that's headline. Headline two is, you should, now as a class, engage in digitization of the memorial you know this? No. Okay, so, and they're doing a presentation, this class, it's, I guess, undergraduate case, they're doing a presentation on the section, the research that they've done. But in addition, taking the stained glass windows, this sign piece, something, yeah. They're investigating, do you know this?
I heard of this.
That they came in and they did like thousands of pictures of them, and they're going to create a virtual presence, I guess,
Wanna pass that on?
to
I know
recreate
they wanna pass that
a
on.
feeling that existed by the Greek chapel, I guess.
Oh, the Greek chapel and not this chapel.
Well, that's where the memorial book was. Yeah. But I'm not, I have to look at the proposal, I'm not
I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know if they.
I spoke to her for about an hour, and I've now volunteered to help her with regard to men who served World War II, both Sanj Hesed as well as to Beret Israel. I'm well aware of the correspondence that Brickner had with his congregants. I'm assuming I could do similar research with Silver.
Change services to something more interesting.
Because I think Britner was a congregational rabbi in a way Silver was not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In the, I mean, in the very.
Anja Hesed, among other things I've done this reading,
Yes, last time.
generated a book
I know, I mentioned.
Soldiers in the Field, 41 to 42 to 46. I don't know where the narrative anything of a similar nature.
I'm very,
It would be the same, similar to what I just said about it.
when they had that in
Clearly, Silver went to great lengths to memorialize the men who served. I mean, the windows were extraordinary because, as Cooper tells me, this was not of interest to the artist. But Silver must have imposed upon him and apparently gave Silver a good deal.
exactly to be assimilated.
Who wasn't interested?
The artist, the guy who created the stained glass windows,
Wasn't interested.
that wasn't part of
I
the
would think
business.
that Silver would make him a good deal.
The other way around.
Why? Silver wanted.
Silver wanted the windows, and it was his idea, and apparently he knew of this guy, but this wasn't really something the guy was likely to do. But because it was Silver asked, the guy did it, and he said, for this sort of work I would normally charge X. But because you're asking, you Silver is asking, I'll give you a deal. Anyway, these are all stories. So the long and the short of it is, I can quote this further, you should probably be more aware of what she's done in the stained glass windows.
I wanted to fill you in on.
She's now asked me
With June
to see if I can explore the men who have been memorial artists. Now, I know two of them, know of two of them. One, do you know the name Udelson?
Yes.
Tom Udelson?
Tom Wilson, sure.
So Tom's uncle, Henry Hank Neubauer, Herbert Neubauer is up on the window. And another man by the name of Arthur Strauss. Do you know that? Arthur Strauss's sister was Joan's client, very successful businesswoman. And Joan tells me, I didn't know this, but both Arthur and Rose Strauss were both kinder transport children. They're stories. Anyway, you can see, if you let me go, I will go down into rabbit holes endlessly.
I'm sort of a rabbit hole guy too. Only on some thing.
I don't have a job.
What did I want to see?
Oh, the last one, I did on one, so I had Grace visit and I went to Jerry, so she's doing, I've introduced the Silver Scholar program to let her know that I'm gonna go there.
to the wording and all of it. So we're okay till that.
See how that plays out. The third piece is, I haven't heard back yet from Amy Kaplan, who I'm going to use to help prod this institution to more seriously looking at not only the super fund, but presumably other funds. Because if,
There was a time when we were investigating all of our funds, trying to clean them up.
yes, and I consider that important as I'm not going to repeat this on a variety of others.
One is that funds, if they require donor permission, would lie dormant.
Yes, yes. And I mean, I don't know, they're not funds of tremendous magnitude, but there could be a $1 million fund. Could be. And someday you don't want a family member to come back and say, did you want to do that?
So there will be no,
Well, you never
You
know.
never know.
right,
It's happened.
Has it?
Well, I think, I mean, the big stories, I got the Princeton. Family came in and said,
Yeah.
"Oh, we got money." So they did what the number wanted. And it cost them big time.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, what we have done, as far as I know indirectly, is if the donors die, there is an exception, then you ask, can we?
Interestingly, there was provision in the Silver Fund agreement. And I'm sure there wasn't provision.
We can tell
That
everybody.
said that at the end of the day, if nothing else interferes with how we might use the fund, we, the temple, will decide how we use the fund. Regardless of what you may have thought, you're all gone, the family's gone.
And is that written out?
Yes, yes, that's an ultimate default.
That's absolutely essential, isn't it?
Well, one would hope that when you set up these very sizable funds, that there would be that kind of
Oh, that's good.
discussion
So
about what
that's
happens if
good, and we'll tell people
the
today.
fund no longer has
But
purpose.
I always
What
worry,
would you like it to be used
somebody
for?
who's never been
And to
to
put that in the documents.
choose April 8th to come for the first.
Probably
time.
the most viable answer is check. I mean, who knows 50 years from now what the purpose, what we might want.
I keep it
Share with the family.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why I said to Adele, maybe you want to think about putting a sunset to the
Forum,
fund,
one of the first days
so
of
that
forum or something.
when you're no longer around,
One in the house.
Sarah's not interested, her dad was not interested, the fund will come to a natural closure. So we won't worry about future generations.
I know,
having
I
to
know,
deal
and then
with
you.
And it would just be absorbed.
it. Whatever, anyway. That's my brief report.
By the way, speaking of the two rabbis, this is a digression, but an interesting one. We were just talking about them. Have you looked at the graves of Brickner and Abba?
I've seen Abba's, but I haven't seen Brick's.
So,
I don't know where it is.
so I'll tell
Is it
you.
Mayfield as well?
It's at Mayfield. You
Yeah.
go in and you turn left
Okay.
at your first left, not the one immediately.
Right.
And you start going down that path.
Right.
Abba is at the curve
Right.
right here.
It's a silver, it's a big.
It's a silver.
Yeah, yeah,
Brickner is here
yeah,
and Abba's here.
Yeah.
Lilybell happens to be here.
okay.
Brickner's grave, especially when the weather gets better, filled with flowers, bushes,
Really?
and to our Father.
Right.
Abba's is essentially empty.
Yeah.
It's this big space
Yeah,
with this rock that Ray found
Right,
in West
right,
Virginia
right,
and 3 stones.
right.
So I've always felt this typifies
Yes.
the difference.
Yes.
Brickner was this very warm and he was very, very severe with a wonderful sense of humor, I understand. But it's very interesting that the graves, take a look.
Another rabbit hole to probe. Well, here's one more sort of neither here nor there. Maybe I told you I'm doing David Hammock's oral history. David Hammock was a well-known history professor at Case.
Oh, let's see.
Harvard graduate. He has a graduate degree from his PhD from Columbia, but you know who his roommate was at Harvard? Lilybell's son, not Joseph Lilybell, the other son.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we have stories endless.
Oh, of course we do.
Ah,
Yeah. Matter of fact, you remember Jim Bellman?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
of course.
So Jim's brother, they both went to Harvard. He knew
As
about it.
did his son, who's my